Okay, we're going to get started on this. Going to be a relatively short meeting today. Just have a couple of things I want to cover. Last week we did the video overview, end-to-end overview, walkthrough, whatever you want to call it. We're in the process of setting up this beta version of this cloud service on our network right now, and it's been an adventure, to say the least. I think it ultimately will work for us, but I'm coming rapidly to a place where I'm probably going to have to make a real call on it because it isn't really serving the purpose the way it needs to be serving it. And a lot of things that we could be doing, we're not doing. But even so, even if it did work the way we want it to, and it does work okay for some things, and it's more the software problem than it is our network. I mean, the network part works good. But I want to talk a little bit about something here real quickly that I've been talking to a number of people about. And it's just one of these things that slowly is going to turn into a product, or it's going to turn into a product feature in our thing. And I think it ultimately helps to turn our thing into something a little bit more attractive than maybe some might see it today. If you go through the entire end-to-end overview, you will get a sense of, what we initially built, what an examiner is, what the console does, and what the relayer is. And there are 3 demos for those, so I highly recommend everybody do it. If we pull the link and put it on our website off of our own cloud, what ends up happening is it's pulling from wherever the providers we choose for our own cloud are. And that means that if you're, in Asia, you're going to be pulling from 8,000 miles away. And so you're probably going to see some buffering and some other nonsense and that sort of stuff. So for us right now, unfortunately, it makes sense for us to leave the link up on YouTube and use YouTube as the distribution, because YouTube provides us with a, much more truer CDN capability. It's under the hood. You don't really see it happening, but you get the file delivered to you performantly no matter where you're at. Well, this leads to something that we know we could do, but we haven't really fleshed it out fully yet. I think it's going to be really cool when we get to the demo of this. Right now, you can stand up a relayer on our network and you can turn around and choose whatever providers you want to choose. So if you're building your own solution to sell to customers as a cloud service professional, you might go in and say, well, what's the overall, footprint look like for this specific customer? And then make a decision on what a relayer ought to look like. And could be a VPS, could be, a machine that lives there at their site. Could be a machine that you operate yourself. It could be a VPS that you manage for them. It could be a lot of those different kinds of configurations. And for most people, it'll start out as a single instance. Maybe it'll be one instance and they're just side saddling some of their archival that they're doing, backing up their network to. And maybe they're going to start off saying, well, we don't really trust you. So, we just want to see how it works. Can you get us 3 months, at a really good deal? And we can. We've said this very clearly to people. And then just have it run side by side with whatever their current solution is. And for most people, those side tests, are going to be fine on single relayer instances and really basic stuff. And so I think we can get some of that off the ground pretty quickly, and we're talking with a few people about that, and I think that will increase over the next 2 quarters, as I've said. But there's an interesting extrapolation that we can do on that, in that just like, the providers are distributed all over the place, there's no reason why we can't have a lot of distribution going on with the relayers, the renters, so to speak. And we've talked a lot internally about what does that look like, because, the minute you bring it up, the first thing people say, well, why would you ever want to do that? Well, the idea is that in the whole Web3 environment, everybody's a renter, right? Everybody has their own node, and they end up, accessing the cloud. Well, that can't work. not for business. It can work for individuals, but even with individuals, they aren't going to find it to be too, attractive until the UX and UIs are really delivered, and the ability to, seamlessly transfer money into crypto and all of the stuff that goes along with it. And regulations come down telling us what's can work and what can't, and all the stuff that goes with it. So what we talked about doing was essentially having, let's say a company comes along and they've got, 3,000 seats, and, those 3,000 seats are scattered in such a way that maybe 1,000 of them are at the corporate headquarters in Dallas. And then you look at it and you say, well, 2,000 employees are now all working from home, and they're not going back. They're not being asked back. They're being asked to continue to work from home. Well, they all need access to the cloud, and it's a situation where some need read access to certain things, some need read write, some need different kinds of access to different security levels, and typical networking stuff that the network administrators are dealing with for remote access workers. So a lot of that's already in place as far as the infrastructure to allow them in. What's not in place is a easy access ability performantly to that relayer architecture. Now, it's certainly possible that they can all phone home, upload into the home directory, and then from there into the cache, and then from the cache out to the network. But ultimately, I think what's going to end up happening is that's going to result in a lot of latency and a lot of lesser performance, and ultimately will probably prove to not be very effective for our tool. And ultimately, people will show head-to-head performance comparisons and laugh, and we might be able to improve it, but at the end of the day, I think it's always going to be a bit of a hamstring if that's how we do it. But at the same time, if a individual that's working from home is just themselves, one access, one person, it's the kind of thing where we could put a very low end relayer. We could tweak that thing and streamline it so it doesn't really need the kind of memory and other kinds of performance profile things, because the one person doesn't really have, a need for, thousands and thousands of files to be rapidly encrypted and, uploaded as fast as potentially possible over, a 2 gig pipe or something like that. More likely, they're just going to upload into a cache and not care really when it goes up. We just need on our side to be able to bring it all into consistency so that people, throughout the corporation get alerted when the files are being pulled from the network proper versus being pulled from the cache. So that's a real thing. And I think we're going to deliver that pretty quickly. And I think ultimately we will have a pretty cool implementation. That's sort of like the extreme circumstance. The middleware could be, maybe you have a corporate headquarters in downtown Dallas, but then you have a couple of satellite offices scattered around in cities and suburbs outlying and so forth, where maybe you have, 50 or 75 people, or you have your sales team in some other office and so forth, or even on different floors of a large building or something. So this notion of being able to extrapolate out the relayer, I think, is going to turn into a pretty important set of development that we focus on and really kind of make that happen. And I think as that works and people really start to understand that, one of the things that comes out of that is that we will be able to build natural and easy to implement ad hoc CDN networks. So it'll be really the kind of thing where, we could set up infrastructure so that people could choose to lease out specific VPSs, or they could, coordinate to rent them themselves or whatever. But architectures in specific locations scattered around the globe based on their need for distribution. So let's say that every Thursday, the CEO gives some kind of a pep talk to the troops, and it's a video that goes out that needs to be sent out, and maybe 10,000 people in the company need to access that video all at the same time. It's not going to be very good if it's all coming from Dallas, right? It needs to come from close to where you're at. So, they can stand up relayer architectures around the world or access relayer architectures around the world that ultimately allow them to deliver that, performantly out to all of their users. That's an expensive service that they typically pay a third party for right now. And ultimately, we can make pretty cost effective and make it, very much under their control. Again, you can hand that over to YouTube. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but if you want to get rid of advertising, if you want to do things, not have it be, deducted or censored because you put some, music in there that you thought your people might like, then at the end of the day, you can't do it there. You're going to have to pay them money to do that. You're going to have to do it in such a way that it's all privately sort of delivered. So there's ways around it there, but you still don't have full control of it. You're surrendering control to somebody else. So I think this is going to be a really potentially cool thing. And I think we're going to use it ourselves for these kinds of things that we're doing right now. And also for the delivery of these videos like the end-to-end overview we just did. So I think what you should take home from what I just said is that we just finished sort of the end-to-end development of our thing. We still have a lot of work to do. We have lots of core development we have to do. We have lots of middleware we have to build. We have lots of front-end stuff we have to do. But the whole thing works now, and that's really a key. And you can use it with tools like VM and other S3 tools that are out there on the block, and actually use it in a performant way that ultimately is less expensive than typical providers. So, everything that comes next is gravy in our view. We, getting here to having it completed was really a big step. That's why we did a special deal last week. If you haven't watched that video, you really should. You should go back and watch it all the way through because it will tell you what we built. And I think it's important as providers that you understand what we built. All right, so let me get on to the two things that are important this week that we're really focusing in on. Before I do that, there's a sort of a sense of understanding of what's going on with the contractor and data uploads and all of that sort of stuff. So I'll reiterate what's really happening since there's always a little bit of scissor running that goes on. The contractor that we use right now went through some pretty serious, trial by fire over the last several months. And it was not an easy process for us internally, and it certainly wasn't an easy process for anybody who actually lost data. And I'm not insensitive to this, My thought process of this is I could put myself in those shoes and I can say, so I came to this thing because somebody told me, it was a real winner and blah, blah, blah. I don't know so much about it, but, I'm here. And, I have a bunch of different of these passive type devices. And so I'm kind of like committed to this whole direction. Don't really believe in the whole Ponzi thing, or not really a big NFT guy or whatever. You're here for whatever reason. And, but then you finally had to get the hard sort of understanding that, well, but because this isn't sort of a Ponzi, and because we didn't go out and generate a shitload of VC money in order to pay you off early, we didn't do something that we could do, right? What we could be doing right now, if we had raised a whole bunch of money for, let's call it network development, but it's really, let's call it what it really is, MLM, right? We could be paying you a lot of money right now. We could be paying you, serious coin against your provider instances. And we could just set a number, right? I mean, we could just say, well, the amount you make for 24 terabytes of storage is this. And then this is what you're always going to make for 24 terabytes. We could have built the model like that if we had gone out and used money that we raised from investors to do that. And then ultimately where we would win in that equation is that you would be making out like bandits today, but then we would be making out like bandits later on. But what would end up happening is a lot of you would probably leave. You'd probably pull your units down or demand that we pay you more or whatever once the whole thing came down the pike. And that's the crypto game, right? That's the whole crypto game. And what ends up happening in crypto is that, projects end up front running and outrunning the people who think they're going to outrun the project, because the project has the blockchain and the project has the coin emission, and they ultimately have the ability to figure out how they're going to reward investors and let the early investors dump on everybody else. And it's sick, and it's what happens over and over and over again, and people just keep buying into it, and they complain when something doesn't look like that. What our thing is different. Our thing says we're going to live and die on a successful product. And until we get a successful product, you ain't going to earn very much. And if you are not interested in that, we've invited everybody to take a real hard look about whether they really want to be here. That's different. That's different from what most people are saying. And at the end of the day, what we've done is we've said, well, we will not, make it so that you have to not earn anything early on. We will put a bunch of test data up because we need to test anyway. So let's put that test data and leave it up there. And then that way we can at least get you some trickle of funds coming in. So I'm not insensitive to this understanding that people who sort of were disappointed to begin with that they weren't going to get a Lambo out of the gate, all of a sudden, had to accept that, okay, well, I'm okay with it. I got, 400 or 300 gigabytes, and it's not an awful lot. It's pennies or dollars or whatever, but at least I'm okay with it. And then, of course, the rude awakening comes, and they get this vertical line down, and they lose it all. And, that, as I said, I'm not insensitive to that, to the feelings that must have been, engendered with a lot of people. But then we actually took it a couple steps further, because that's what we do. And our contractor turned around and it said, well, the team looks like the team filled some of these people right back up, in order to kind of mitigate that sad feeling. So we better take it away from them again. And then there are a couple of people that had it 3 times. And, that sucks. There's just no other word for it. That sucks. Same time, it's test data. I mean, it isn't God-granted data. It isn't data from real paying customers. It's data coming out of our pockets, and our pockets are not endless. We don't have, the however many millions of dollars a year of coin emission coming into our pockets like somebody like Helium has, right? And what is happening with all those coins that they get? Well, who knows? I mean, are they being dumped on community? I don't know. I don't know, and I don't care, but I know that we don't have that. So when we have to pay out coins on this data, it's coins that are coming directly out of a finite set of wallets. And then the next step is we have to go out and actually buy coins on the open market. Well, we've been doing that for the last 2 years. We bought a lot of coins this year. But again, we didn't raise a big pot of money from venture capitalists, so where's the money coming from? Well, it turns out it's coming out of salaries, right? And we're getting to a point where pretty soon we're going to have to start really talking hard about whether we have enough to actually, pay at the levels we currently have and to keep the team we currently have. And so it is what it is. I'm currently in the process of working through, taking that end-to-end demo, taking a well-developed pitch deck that we have, taking a bunch of other assets and resources that we've screwed together, and starting to set up real conversations with venture capitalists so that we can get that kind of raise now, because now it makes sense, right? Now, I don't think we're going to get the same kind of, investments that some of these other projects got, because I'm not going to go out west and say, oh, this thing's a huge Ponzi. You can dive in right now, and with the money you guys put in, we can guarantee you're going to get back 100x, because you're going to get all these tokens that are going to be able to dump on everybody else quickly and rapidly. Everybody else is going to have, serious lockups and won't be able to get in time, and you'll be able to get out before everybody else. We're not going to do that. We're just going to go out as a regular startup and say, yeah, I mean, there's a blockchain underneath it, but we don't have any ability to give you coins from the blockchain. If you want coins from the blockchain, you're going to have to buy them. We don't have them, so there you go. And that's going to limit our ability, but at the same time, it's also going to limit who we actually, on board as a venture capitalist, because they're going to come on more about the product. They're going to come on more about, well, can you actually sell this thing and really generate real customer revenues? And most cryptos can't answer yes to that question, by the way. And because they can't answer yes, they don't get those real, onboarded VCs. They get the ones that are looking to Ponzi and dump on a community. In our case, I think we're going to do fine. I think we're going to get the money we need. And, we will then be able to move forward with the next sets of plans and blah, 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 blah. But until that time, what has to happen is we've got to make sure we don't do anything crazy. And one of the things that somebody asked about was, well, why don't you just load 30 or 40 petabytes up on the network and pay everybody a whole bunch of money? Well, we could. We certainly could. But essentially, the wallets would run dry really quick, and then we'd be standing here essentially with nothing to continue. And then we would have to make some really tough decisions. So it's not a real thing, and we can't really do that. We can put some up, and we have, and we are putting more up. If you look at the chart, currently at 1.3 or somewhere in that neighborhood, it's going to probably reach 2 petabytes over the next several weeks. Just looking at it, I don't know that for a fact, but I think based on testing and what we're doing and potential onboardees, I think that's what's going to happen. But the first onboardee that comes on with any serious data is going to put a kickstart behind it. And that's going to be really fun because we'll see it jump from 2 to 4 or 2 to 6 or something like that. And then we'll be able to say, not only are we at some point, not only are we the second largest network in crypto, but we're the second most utilized. And then at that point, I think a lot of people will start waking up and understanding what's going on. So we do think we've solved the majority of the contracting issues. We put together some infra that allows us to identify in advance if providers look like they're going to be losing. So we may be in contact with you from time to time now from the support side saying, hey, looks like you have a collateral issue, or hey, it looks like you have some kind of a availability issue, and you better keep an eye on that because you got a contract coming up for renewal that you may lose if you don't, totally keep it under. So we're doing a lot of that. And I think that we've probably got the contracting pretty well under control. Not saying there isn't going to be some more cases of providers losing, but it probably won't be very much. And that's where we're headed now. So we're fully in the posture of starting to really push for partners to start onboarding data onto the network and not really totally locked up in the other things. So in that light, where we are in this sort of coming down to the wire, so to speak, in other words, we have this tight financial situation. And by the way, part of the financial situation is just driven by straight ahead market dynamics. We could never control the fact that the Fed was going to run into this huge inflation thing. And it turned out that crypto and Bitcoin wasn't actually an inflation hedge after all, and, all the other sort of stuff. But as the prices come down, so has the price of our crypto. And as the whole market macro has melted down, so has people's willingness to absorb certain kinds of risk. So, it's going to be tight. And it looks like we're going to end up, right down to the wire as we're trying to onboard storage customers. And unfortunately, when I say right down to the wire, what I really am saying is we're going to have money to pay for the things that we really have to have in order to survive and succeed. We're going to be able to pay the salaries of everybody on the team. We're going to be able to, cover all of our server expenditures that we have and, anything that we need to do and so forth. But what we aren't going to be able to do is we aren't going to be able to pay our way onto Binance. We're not going to be able to buy, 2 million coins on the open market and push price higher. We're not going to be able to, spend money on marketing out in, storage world and take trade shows and, do all the sort of stuff that we really ought to be doing. We're essentially in a place right now where we're hunkered down and we are just paying the freight. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, you're probably paying yourselves way too much money and you should cut everybody's salary in half. And, everybody, I don't even know why these people in crypto projects make money anyway. Why should they? All they're doing is like writing code and doing Golang and all this sort of server operations and stuff. Isn't that shit like really easy to do? And you get that. And it's not a thing. We actually, on a per employee basis, have a pretty, modest salary, actually. To be frank about it, there are quite a few people on our team that probably are due for an increase. And they're willing to sort of forego it at this point because they see what we built, they know what we built, and they know how it's going to turn out, and they have equity in all of that. So, it is what it is. And it's not a great thing that we're constrained, but we are constrained. All right. So what are we doing to sort of solve that right now? Well, we've got a couple of initiatives that I think are going to work in your favor, right? And we always want to work in your favor first before anybody else in this whole equation. We did one yesterday and starting this 16 terabyte unit flash sale. The flash sale is going to put an extra 555 SCP in your pocket immediately when the units come up live. And that's in addition to, the current 37.5 rebate that's out there on that unit. So that's really strong because one of the things that, I'm convinced of, and I know that people, they're willing to gamble, I guess, on this or against it, if that's the way you say it. We have people that bought units as early as June of 2021. That was the first sort of sales of the X-Miners. Well, anybody who bought units back in June through, say, August of 2021 has not only ROI'd their machine, but they've actually made quite a bit of profitability on them. And what's going to end up happening here is all the people that bought in batch one are going to be saying the exact same thing come January or February or March or somewhere in that time frame. Now, there are people that are shaking their heads right now and saying, I don't know, they aren't earning much money and blah, blah, blah. And that coin price just keeps going down and down and down. And I don't see how this works. That doesn't make any sense to me. I can't really try and convince you, so I'm not going to. I'll just tell you, meet me back here in, 6 months and we'll have this conversation again. But that is likely to be the case, by the way, because when we get our venture type raise, there are several things that work in our favor. For one, we're one of the few coins out there that really has never got price discovery. And if you don't believe that, if you say, well, yeah, but you went up to $3, I don't understand if you're saying that's not price. Yeah, but at $3, we were $100 million. We have an end-to-end product, right? And you could say that Saya is, somehow a better project than ours because they have better staff, they have better goals. I don't know. I totally disagree, but you can make that case. I'm willing to hear the case. But are they 16 times better than us? Are they literally 16 times better than us? And 16 times with the market completely compressed, right? I mean, they're down to a couple $100 million market cap because, they've failed a second company now. They're literally flailing around, not telling the community exactly what they're doing. They've got an emission that allows them to dump 1.7 billion coins out of 55 billion coins every single year on their community. And yet they've got that giant, sort of deduct to us that doesn't make any sense. I think in large part, we're still just unknown, and that once we get a true venture capitalist behind us, we will turn around and we will put our coin onto a large exchange. That is part of what we're raising money for. And when we put that money on the big exchange, suddenly people will know us. People that don't know us right now, who are these guys? What's their deal? Holy cow, did you look at the size of their network? It's like twice as big as these guys. And a bunch of those aha moments are going to go on where people do end up discovering this hidden gem, right? We've tried to alert all these people, by the way, but a lot of them, just look at it and say, not really on a real exchange. Never heard of these guys. They're not professional cryptographers. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they swim in Vitalik circles. I don't know. We'll just kind of hang. Well, we'll get onto a big exchange and that will all change, and it will change overnight. You'll see what happens. But part of our venture money is dedicated to exactly that. And it's dedicated to doing the market making underneath once we get onto a big exchange. So we'll pay for all of that, and we'll make sure that we are successful on a larger exchange when it comes down the pike. So buying X-Miners last December is going to turn out, I think, to be an amazing sort of a situation. It's like it was for the earlier ones. And I think buying them right now is going to be an amazing one. And I think buying them for the next 2 or 3 years is going to be amazing. Because if you look at the helium model and watch how it went up the ladder, they didn't start becoming unamazing until they had gotten 400,000 or 500,000 nodes on the network, right? And I think that's going to be the same for us. I think we're not going to actually be there until we get, several 100,000 nodes on the network. We got 3,800 right now. So, this thing's got so much room to run. It's not even funny. And as the macro starts to improve and as we start to get out of the woods, I just think you're going to see all that. We've already got a lot of money and resources earmarked at it so that we can hit the ground running as soon as we get the funding we're looking for. And I'm not at all, trying to sell anybody here on funding our company at all with a cap raise. That's not really a thing. And, the only way I would even entertain a conversation with any of you was if you vetted yourself privately first and I was able to find out, and then we would have a very different offline conversation. It's not legal for me to be up here trying to sell funding to you folks. So I'm completely and totally not. This has nothing to do with that. I'm just telling you what we're going to use the money for once we go west and get a VC to fund us. So there you go on that. 16 terabyte unit, and there's a limited number, by the way, that's going to do this. We have a number. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but as soon as we hit that number, the flash sale goes poof. So this isn't like something that's just going to run in perpetuity into the end of the year. It's got a very limited shelf life, and you'll wake up one day here soon and it will not be there anymore, and you'll say, oh, damn, I should have done that. The other one is as interesting, is a tool that we're working on right now. We did licensing on the network, and remember what we said last, maybe 2 storage meetings ago, maybe 3, I don't remember. All the basic licenses are now fully rebated. So, and that's going to continue. If you have a basic license, you can count on it getting rebated back to you. That's just our thing to sort of say thank you for being in the network, DIYers who don't really, have a big overarching interest in the project. For people that want to go further, that want to support the developers and that really want to help grow the network and want to play in the real space of what the network's going to look like, which is the Examiner software, the Examiner interface, the Examiner strategy. We have this full version of the Examiner software coming, and the full version as just a straight ahead price when it first went out the door was $450, and for the first whatever it was 6 to 8 weeks, I don't remember. I think it ended April 30th. If you bought in that period of time, you got a rebate of 50%. And so that was a pretty cool deal. And, we sold a number of those units that were out there. But we told them, could be a while before we actually ship that product. Well, we're about ready to ship the first part of that product, which is a full Linux version. We think everybody really will want to get into the full Linux version, but we'll get a Windows version done at some point here shortly after. But right now, the Linux version is under alpha testing, about to go into a beta testing period, which is going to be very short and just need to verify that we've cleaned up the things the alpha guys discovered. Thing works. Thing works really good. And it turns your rig into an Examiner, the one you built, the one made up of Legos and Tinker Toys and whatever else you managed to mash together and somehow pull electricity out of the sun and provide a DIY configuration. I'm kidding, right? I mean, no, it's not. But the deal is that the full version works really well, and you just run it. It takes you through a couple of prompts. Tell us about your storage. Tell us about your key. Tell us about this. Bang! It just instantiates, and next thing you know, you got supervisor running. It's updating pricing. It's doing all the stuff it's supposed to do. You got the beautiful UX that we're currently working on. You go into console and see it in there, and it's just cool. It's just really cool. So what we'll probably do here over the next, starting Monday is my guess, is we will go ahead and put a new product, a part number up there in the store. And there will be a couple of part numbers, actually, probably one for the basic guys, right? To upgrade from basic to full version and, be the difference, $350. And then probably we'll instantiate the 50% rebate again for a limited period of time. So if you really were looking to get into an Examiner but didn't want to spend $14.95 or whatever, well, you can spend $350 on top of the $99 you already did, which you're already going to get back, and you'll get back, half of that $350 and be able to claim that you actually have an Examiner and show people the screenshots to prove it. still look like garbage, but well, maybe not garbage. You probably have some pretty cool looking rigs. They buried the rig porn thread anyway, so I don't see your rigs much anymore. But it's going to be a deal for you guys. And then the other one that's really interesting is if you have an Examiner, you got a free basic license. And the deal is we'll make a part to go up from the free basic license on the Examiner to a full license as well. And so folks will definitely want to take a look at that because, again, we'll put some rebates together, again, on a limited basis. And you folks can get in and take advantage of that and help us to get to that place where we can achieve the capital raise and do everything we need to do by the end of the year and make this thing actually a success. The other piece then is just people that want to buy flat, don't have a basic license at all, don't have an Examiner with a basic license. We'll have that part number also, again, freshly rebated starting Monday, and you'll be able to buy in on that. So we really think that's going to do some really interesting stuff because, look, the Examiner software works really well right now and has a lot of really important features in there that are very valuable and I think stuff that people really want to see and use. But we also have a clear goal to add 2 key features to Examiners that will not be available to anybody else. And those features are the remote access feature of tying them all together under the console. So when you get 15 nodes out there and you want to be monitoring them, you'll be able to. And then the other one is a true accounting, the whole contracting thing. We know we need to go back and rework a lot of the whole Explorer module underneath to get this thing set up correctly. But that's next on the schedule, and our guys are already gearing up to really tackle that and take care of it. And when you get around to taxes, when these things are really starting to pay out big time, you're going to definitely want to have that. So there's a lot of value in being early, and one of those values right now is getting this software on the cheap compared to what it's going to cost you a year from now or 2 years from now if you come in as a late person. There just won't be the same kind of incentives involved to bring you into the thing. And part of the reason is because you're helping to get this thing over the hump, helping us to get the development done correctly and to do the stuff we need to do. The other thing that will come out of this whole capital raise deal is we've got a tranche of the money separated out for raw storage marketing and advertising. And I'm not talking about crypto marketing. I'm talking about advertising in places where, IT people hang out, find out about storage networks. Right now, they don't even know who we are. They've never heard of us. We aren't out there. They don't view us as a thing. But if we get our name marketed out there and we get some brand recognition built up and so forth, it will help our partners out and make it easier to onboard that storage. So some of the money is dedicated to that. Some of it is dedicated to new personnel. We have definitely a whole group of personnel that we need to onboard, including marketing and sales. But also we have some things on the back end that we really need to get done that will make your lives a lot easier and cleaner and more powerful. And so there's definitely money earmarked to that. And then there's some money also earmarked, obviously, as I said at the beginning, just to keep buying coins because we have to. We're going to have to keep buying coins to drop into storage contracts, drop into rebates, drop into incentives, drop into some of the salary that we're actually paying out to people. So it is a thing. And so we will definitely earmark some of that money to go out to that. All told, if fingers crossed, if things go to plan, I would hope that we have good news on the whole investment front by the end of the year. That's aggressive. Typically these kinds of capital raises do take 12 to 16 weeks, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little less. But we're not in that phase right now where people at these companies are throwing money, just hurling it at people. So we know we're going to have to take a strong pitch. We know that they're going to have to try the product out, and it's now possible for them to do that. So, it's a good situation, and I think we're going to do well, but it is probably going to be right up to the end of the year. So buying licenses, buying Examiners, way to help the project right now, also the way to help yourself. And I'll open it up for questions. Really? No questions, huh? I don't think we've ever got out without any questions, but it could be the first time. I'm willing to accept this as the first time. We'll leave it open here for about another minute, another 60 to 90 seconds. If nobody raises their hand, then I'm going to terminate the event. You open up the window here just so that I make sure I don't miss anybody in this process. And like usual, it's being recorded. So once you get done watching the overview and then walkthrough video, then you can go back and re-listen to this episode, although there wasn't a ton of extra information delivered. Okay, I'm going to end the call. Thanks everybody for showing up today. It was a very short one, probably the shortest we've ever had. But we're kind of down to that point now where really it's all about actually delivering, and we are delivering, and we are getting stuff out onto the street that works. So I think you can be very proud of the project you're involved in. I think you can plan on seeing really good things coming. We do have a solid plan laid out for us. We do have a very clear directive on what we need to do to succeed. And we're just grinding forward and getting it done. So thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next week.